Welcome. This is Panic Consulting's ArcGIS workshop. And for this workshop, what we're going to do is we're going to tackle the topic of making the move from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro for editors. And this is going to be specifically about editors. We're going to touch on a lot of topics that an editor will have to be aware of. I'm Frank Conkling. I'm glad you're here. You'll see in the lower right corner, you will see a QR code that will take you to Panic Consulting's website, tell you who we are, what we do, how we do it, why we do it. At the very bottom of the first landing page, you'll also find a registration form. Fill it in, and you'll start getting our monthly newsletter together with the links to go and participate on these workshops live. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and start. So we've got a lot to cover. Actually, you look at the slides, we've got about 66 slides. You probably will not cover them all, but we can break it down into basically 4 different areas. The first one is going to be data structure incompatibilities. When you're trying to consider the move from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro, and by the way, I strongly suggest everybody get out of ArcMap as quickly as possible, get over into Pro. There's not very many reasons why you would want to stay in ArcMap anymore. But there is data structure incompatibilities. There's certain things that you have to know have changed. We're going to talk about the annotation changes, the COGO attribution changes, those of us that are editors, especially parcel editors, and then personal geodatabases and what we're going to do about that, or what we can't do anymore about that. And then we're going to start covering ArcGIS Pro, just sort of as an introduction. What about the interface? What's the differences between the interfaces? Where are things located? How do you do certain things? We'll talk a little bit about project structure. We'll talk, as we go through the hour or so, we'll look at editing tools. What's the differences? Which is better? And we'll look at those more. So let's start with the major issues. We've got 3 issues. We've got annotation that changes. And if we go into, when we go into ArcGIS Pro, we have to figure out what we're going to do with our annotation. It is different. And we also have COGO attributes, and we'll discuss why the change is and where it is and what's going to happen. And then finally, all of our personal geodatabases. So the first thing let's look at is ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro have different annotation structures. And the reality is this difference in structures really comes down to about 2 different attribute fields in there that have been added on here. But the key thing is to recognize that the structures are different, so that one structure may or may not be able to read the other structure. And they're not editable in both structures. So that while you can go and view ArcMap annotation inside of Pro, you can view it all day, you can look at it, you can actually create maps from it. You cannot edit it in Pro. In order for it to be edited in Pro, you must upgrade that feature class to work inside of Pro. And here's where the warning comes in. Because the upgrade geoprocessing tool that's required to go and do this overwrites the existing annotation feature class, overwrites it completely. So that if you wish to keep your old annotation, and perhaps you want to continue to have some couple copies of ArcMap still around to use it, you want to make sure that you copy the annotation feature class and then do an upgrade on that copy. Because once it's upgraded, ArcMap can no longer read ArcGIS Pro annotation once it's been upgraded. All right, so remember to always go and make sure that if you're going to use ArcMap again in the future with that annotation feature class, that you have a copy of that annotation, what it looked like at that time. And let's see if we can actually go and look at that. I don't even know if I have any annotation in here. I don't. That was silly. Oh, here's some. I have some dimension annotation in here. Let's go ahead and take and move that over here into this ArcGIS Pro project. Now, when I look at it, and by the way, it's probably, I didn't even, let's go and open this up and see what we've got here. Oh, it's an empty feature class, annotation feature class. This is somebody else's data, by the way. Let's see if we've got any others in here. Nope, that's about it. But let's go in and look again and just add it into our current map and look and see that if we go to here, it looks like this actually is already converted. Let's go and create this, and because it is a pro annotation feature class, if we go to our properties on here, it will tell us what we can do with this. It'll tell us 32. And yeah, it looks like we can actually edit this. But if this was just ArcMap annotation, it will give us a warning. It says that we cannot go and edit this at all. All right, so just be aware that annotation is a very different structure inside of ArcGIS Pro. It's actually been enhanced. There's a lot of things you can do now with annotation that you couldn't do inside of ArcMap. But the key is that you have to go and copy it. There's other issues with annotation, and those people that know me know that I'm not a fan of annotation. I know that's something that we used to do when we were producing printed maps out, and there's a lot of expectation as far as from a cartographic standpoint, how do we do it? But I can tell you, and I'll challenge you, you should see if you can do the same sort of thing inside of Pro. Pro has got some amazing enhancements in it, especially as it relates to labeling, scaling of labels, the placement of labels. It's really greatly enhanced from what Map used to be able to do. But just remember, annotation cannot be edited in Pro if it's ArcMap annotation. Once you upgrade it, you can't read it backwards in Map anymore. So that's annotation. Not a whole lot we can do, but just be aware. You're going to have to go and upgrade it to be able to go and edit it. Just to let you know, the upgrade capability, really all we have to do is we go to the geoprocessing, and the geoprocessing tool that we use is called Upgrade Dataset. And again, if we were go in and use this data set here, this will already tell us oh, it's already upgraded. We can't upgrade it. But if this was ArcMap, it would give us a warning, not an error, but a warning. An error, by the way, has got an X on it. A warning has got a triangle on it. And the warning would say, this is going to upgrade this data set. So either make sure you have a copy of it or just be aware that you're never going to be able to go backwards with this on here. So again, upgrade data set is the one which will go and update the structure for you. And that it's a pretty simple process to go and do. All right, so those of us that are parcel mappers, and I consider most of what we do, because Panda Consulting is a land records professional services firm, we deal with parcels. And with parcels, we want to know, where did the values, the COGO values, for example, the bearings, the distances on the boundary lines of the parcels, what did the source information say it should be? And what's happened is that the change from ArcMap into Pro, Esri took a look at it and said, you know, with ArcMap, we basically were using COGO fields just to document and just to produce a label with it. We really weren't doing any sort of analysis on it. Well, with Pro, and especially with the parcel fabric in Pro, we're beginning to use those COGO fields to do more than just produce a label. We're actually going and beginning to use them for analysis, comparing how long the line is, what the COGO value actually says, comparing what the bearing is on there to what the actual map bearing is, looking at whether or not there's been any scaling or rotation on it. So the key thing is that the COGO fields are now numeric fields, and they are no longer string values. They are no longer text fields. So if you look here at the COGO attributes inside of Pro, you'll see doubles here. These are double word numbers, meaning they are number fields. Let's go back over here to the sample that I'm looking at. I have two different line fields. Both of them are COGO fields. This one here says it's from ArcMap. And if I go to my data design fields, all right, and I look at that, I can see that all of my COGO fields here, these are text fields. All right. You also notice a difference here. The text fields that are inside of here, again, they were primarily to store the value itself, and that was about it, to produce a label on it. But you'll notice which ones. You've got direction, distance, delta, radius, tangent, arc length, side. On here, they've changed. Now, when I go to my ArcGIS Pro COGO fields in here, and I'm going to move this below here so we can see the difference. Now, when I look at these fields, these are all number fields in here. And if I scroll down a little bit, I will see that I have direction, distance, radius, arc length, radius 2. What's radius 2? It's a new COGO field for us. Radius 2 has to do with spiral curves and our ability to go and track and input spiral curves now. That's what radius 2 is. And then we have a couple fields in here. We have delta, tangent, side. These actually came, and you'll look, these are text fields, meaning this line feature class originally was this one, but we upgraded it, and we decided to carry over these. The delta, tangent, side attribute fields are no longer COGO fields. They are no longer calculated or supported because of the way ArcGIS Pro uses Arcade. It does on-the-fly calculations. You can derive those for both labeling and evaluation on the fly. You don't need to store those values anymore. So they've been removed and they're not carried over. You can go and still keep them and calculate them using things like attribute rules, but by default, they are not there. So how do you go and change from your ArcMap COGO fields into your ArcGIS Pro? Initially, we had to go and do this on our own. However, Jason, with the parcel fabric development team, actually the parcel development team, Jason Camarada at Esri, wrote a great tool. And there is a custom toolbox from Esri available. Here is a hot link to it. This will get you to there. This actually also is a QR code to download that same tool off of there. You can go back to the go back to YouTube. You could look at the recording here and take a snapshot of it. It'll take you to it. Or you can go to Esri's community sites and look for Migrate ArcGIS COGO to Pro, and you'll see the tool and you can download it. Jason did a great job on this. We use this all the time to go and migrate from ArcMap COGO into ArcGIS Pro COGO. So what's it do? It actually goes and brings you it's a geoprocessing tool. It's a geoprocessing script, right? In which it asks you to go and locate the line feature class containing the ArcMap COGO fields. And it asks you to go and prompt and say, okay, so what are you going to go and rename this when you go and rename it, and whether or not you're going to a place to go and show you where the actual errors are, if there are any. And then you wind up doing field mapping and saying that inside of ArcMap, they were called this, and now they're going to be called this. So you can see the mapping between them, because different iterations of ArcMap COGO. Sometimes they called it bearing, sometimes they called it direction, sometimes they called it angle. It depends upon when you created those COGO fields inside of ArcMap. But this allows you to go and determine where everything is located, and it will go and put the new Pro attribute fields and name them and pull the values out of here, recalculate them as you go forward, and it will create the new values for them. Like I said, this one here is ArcGIS Pro COGO. This is ArcMap COGO. If we go in here and look at this, all right, we can see that in fact, this is what the direction looks like now. This is what the distance looks like. If we have any radiuses, let's go in here and sort this so that we can see if there's a radius. There are some radiuses in here. So we've got a radius here, we've got the arc length, and whether or not there was a radius 2 or not. These are the values that were stored on the old text fields, but they're not stored anymore. So this is what the new COGO fields look like. When you're looking at it, it looks the same, but just know these are actually numeric values that are in here. All right, so let's go and step back. By the way, one thing I didn't talk about was personal geodatabases. Personal geodatabases are Microsoft Access MDB files. And there were a lot of us actually used to use them back with ArcMap, in which we would store our geodatabase in them. But because of licensing issues, because Microsoft has moved away from the MDB standard into ACCX, I think it is, but they've changed their access structure. Those are no longer supported, so that personal geodatabases are not supported for ArcGIS Pro. You cannot read them. You're going to have to migrate them into a file geodatabase for it to be readable there. All right. Okay, let's take a break. I don't see any comments in the chat window yet. I don't see anything, any questions in there. So let's go ahead and move forward. The next thing I want to talk about is actual interfaces and the differences between the interfaces. On the left side here, you see this is ArcMap. This is tried and true. Believe it or not, ArcMap is now well over 20 years old. I remember when it first came out, and it's showing its age. At the time, it looked more like AutoCAD. As it moved along, we had toolbars and such. ArcGIS Pro is a newer interface that actually follows the Microsoft Ribbon interfaces. And those of us that have been using these types of interfaces for a long time, we just have to reacclimate ourselves as to where those tools are. I can share with you a story that I personally don't like the ribbon because it sorts logically things, but I'm more of a production person, so I want to know where my tool is. I don't want to have extra steps or extra tabs to go through. And so with one single toolbar, that's easy for me to put together. It turns out that inside of Pro, you actually can do this. There's a thing called a quick access toolbar that I can go and customize and create my own little toolbar here. And that has my edit tools on here. So let's look at these interfaces again as we go through here. Let's look at the first thing. When you first start up ArcMap, you're going to have to log in. It uses basically a username to go and allow you to log in, and it allows you to go and have access to the licenses. So one of the benefits of this is that you literally can have ArcGIS Pro software on a machine and share it between people, and they can actually log in to their account, their username, and it will go and set the software for them as it's been set either on ArcGIS Online or the Enterprise portal. But you do have to go and log in order to be able to use it. Project files. Project files. There's a difference between an ArcMap map document, which is a single document, and an ArcGIS Pro project file. A project file contains multiple data sources, contains multiple map documents, multiple layouts in it. There's a lot of things that you can do with a project file. It is meant to be all-encompassing place in which you store everything related to a specific project. So you don't wind up with creating a map document for printing a map at a certain size, and then a different map document for another size, and another one for another size, and then one for editing, and then one's for, so you don't wind up doing all that. You wind up having basically one single project file, which you edit on, and you move forward. So it's a different way of thinking about how you manage your data. It's not this one-off thing. It's like, okay, what am I going to do with this data? What am I going to do with this project? And you organize your structure, you organize all your data around that project file. So the project file, just to go through here a little bit more, the project file can contain databases, contain multiple databases. It can contain databases that are file-based databases. It can contain an enterprise geodatabase, either SDE or a branch version database, and it should be ands, not ors. It can contain information from portals, either your ArcGIS Online portal, your enterprise portal, or whatever portals you have access to. So it can contain multiple sources of data, and those multiple sources of data are all editable if you have the rights to it. Your username is the one that gains and maintains the edit rights and the access rights that you have to your data. Right. Also on here, you can have under these map documents, I can have multiple maps in here. You're going to see I'm going to add an ArcMap document here. I'm going to import one, and you're going to see another map in here. You can have multiple folders as part of your project. If I want to go and add a new folder connection, I can go and do that, and I can just go in this case, I'm just going to go and add one here, and I can have multiple folders in here. One of the nice things with ArcGIS Pro is that you'll look up on the top here, and you have, this is your project definition. Everything is part of your project. This is your portal. These are your online, your enterprise connections. This is your computer. I have complete access to my computer, everything that's associated on my computer in here. And I have favorites. I can go and create my own favorites and put them in place and keep them for me so I can customize it for me. All right. Catalog view, again, you just saw me go through some of this. You can have multiple connections to different things. Can I share my projects to your public website through the portal? If in fact the data is accessible from the portal, yes, you can. Yeah, there is some changes going on in which you can actually change it. You can save a project on your enterprise and share that out. There's all sorts of share properties that you can put on there. Go back to catalog view. All right, what are the more anxiety-inducing things that people do is say, well, I have an ArcMap. I don't want an ArcMap map document. I don't want to lose everything that's in that. The good news is it's super easy to go and take an ArcMap project and bring it in. And we'll demonstrate here. If I go over to my folders, and I can see here I have a folder which has everything in here, and I'll see I actually have a demo MXD. This is a map, an ArcMap map document. And if I right click on that and say import it that and open it up, it actually will go and take that map document, read it in, bring everything in here, and set it all up so that I can work on it inside of Pro. It does all that for you, sets the symbology as it's stored inside of the map document. The labeling still uses the same ArcMap labeling structure. You may want to go and convert over to ArcGIS Pro structures, but right now it brings it in. You can edit it exactly as it is. You don't have to do any differences other than know it's now contained and gets stored inside of a project file. All right, so if I actually go and look at here, I can now see I have two maps in here. I have my original map one, which is this map document here. And then I have my ArcMap map document that I brought in. So if you have existing ArcMap documents everywhere, you can go and take, right click on them, add them in, and it will convert it. We've got another comment that the tool that converts does not include any Word or Excel files. You are right. You are right on that. Yes, it does not include any of those yet. But I'm sure if you go and mention that on the ideas, they'll consider at least putting it in. And that's the other difference, is that we're seeing that Esri is now a lot more amenable to listening to some of the things that we want to do with this. All right, got a lot to cover. So this is, by the way, this is import and open, super simple way for you to get started in here. There is, and this was the same, this was true in ArcMap. Inside of our project file, there are default files, there are default locations. The name of our file, where it's stored, and this is the project file, but these are APRXs, not MXDs. The home folder as far as where it's located. The default geodatabase, where the default geodatabase is. That includes even if you're working against enterprise or portal data, you have a default geodatabase. That is where temporary files get created, is in the default geodatabase. And you can set that, and then a default toolbox. Every project has a default toolbox on it. So you want to know where that is. By the way, this option area, this is called Backstage. And the way you get there is in ArcGIS Pro, all the way over on your maps is a tab called Projects. I'm going to go back to it here. This is the Project tab. That Project tab will take you to, this is all the settings for ArcGIS Pro. And the options is the one which will go and show you all the things that you can set on here. Can you set application-wide default units for the measurement tools? Configure for the current project. Actually, I think you can, but interestingly, you'll find that there's actually, similar to ArcMap, there's actually a template file that gets opened up. I can't tell you exactly where it is right now, but if you want to, you and I can talk later. There is a way to go and set the template file, which gets opened up. It's kind of like the old start file in ArcMap used to be, where it would set the default for that project, excuse me, for that application, and then you would open up the map documents, or, and with ArcGIS Pro, you would open up the project files. There is a way to go and do that now. It is a template file that gets opened up. All right, so here is the default files and where they're located. Let's look at the ribbon interface. Again, the ribbon interface includes a top menu. That top menu contains all the different ribbons, the different tabs. They have different functions. And you want to start thinking about the functions. What am I going to do with this? And that's where it's going to store it. If you're going to look at the mapping functions, here's all the mapping functions. This is the Identify tool, is now called the Explore tool. And it's a combination of the identify and the hyperlink, and you can tell it, what do I want to look at? In this case, if I go and click on here and say, let's go and look here, it pops it up and then will tell me, again, identify, but this can be expanded and have charts and do all sorts of things in there. Bookmarks are on the map tab, the base map, whatever type of base map you want behind here, add data, selections. These are in a couple different places. This is a selection. So if you look at the actual ribbon, what you'll find is that, again, the tabs are set according to functions. And then inside of there's groupings. This is a tab group. This has the specific functions related to the clipboard. Cut, copy, paste. There's also paste special if you pull this down. Navigation. These are the navigation tools that are on here. So this is the navigation tab group. Bookmarks, go to, in, zoom, zoom out, full extent, search, go to. Here's your layers, adding graphic layers, setting base maps. Selections, you have a tab group for selections. How do you select things? The different ways to select things, select by attributes, select by locations, pull up your attribute table here. This is actually your attribute pane, sorry about that. And then there's inquiries, measure things, locate things, infographics, conversions between coordinate systems. There's a labeling group in here. There's offlines. And you'll see that for each of these different functions, inserting things, inserting a new map, inserting a layout for printing, inserting report, importing maps, creating connections, analyzing things. This is the old Arc catalog. This is the tools. This brings up the geoprocessing tools, and it has both favorites, things that you've done, and the complete toolbox system, including what you might have out on the portal, any ready-to-use tools that are out on the portal. That's your geoprocessing here. And again, there's all sorts of analysis tools that you can use. There's, again, all sorts of workflows already preset. Explore them if you want. The viewing tools, how do you view things between here? One of the interesting things I found about with this is that when I have multiple maps in here, all right, I can set them up so that they are linked together, so that as I move one map around, the other map follows it. I'm in the exact same location. Now I can go and do that by going to view and pulling it down and saying link and center and scale my maps, and they will all move. Here's an interesting thing about this is that with Pro, because of the enhanced graphics capabilities of it, I can do things like take two different maps and I can actually go and put them next to one another so that as I'm moving this, I can see different things. And as I switch between my maps, I get the different table of contents in here. So I can set this up so I can see them side by side. I can see them on top of one another. It actually is very flexible for how I want to go and work with this. All right. Ribbon interface. For editors, we have the Edit tab. This Edit tab has got everything from the clipboard, again, is on here, to managing edits, things like start editing and stop editing. We're going to talk about it in a minute here. We have save edits, discard edits. We have topology, and this is our topology area here. We have snapping. This is our create features, which brings up a pane, which has all of our tools for creating things. A modify, which has all of our edit tools are on here. If we have something selected, we can actually go and use a delete here. There's a delete on there. We can clear, we can select our attributes. There's a thing here called the gallery, which is, again, another way that we can find all of our tools. And that's one of the nice things is about what they've done with Pro is they've actually gone and taken these tools and rethought the way they work, restructured them, made it easier for us to go and work with. So let's keep going through this. Ribbon interface. Again, the standard ribbon terminology. Here's the ribbon. Here's our, up on top here is this quick access. You can actually go and modify that. And we have individual tabs. We have tab groups here, related tools in here. We have what's called a contextual tab group. All right, let's go and show you what that is when you're first getting into here. So if I'm on a layer here, let's go here so we can see a difference here. I just clicked on my map display here. And note, if I look across the top here, what tabs I have available to me. I have Project Map, Insert, Analysis, View, Edit, Imagery, Share, Help. But if I change over to a different tab, if I click on my layer, it brings up additional tabs which are related to that context in which I'm looking at it. So when I click on the layer, suddenly I have these what's called contextual tabs. This is, okay, here's the feature class. What can I do with this feature layer? Here's all my scales ranges. Here's my transparency, my swipe capability, my symbology on here, all of that. Well, I also have a contextual one for labeling. Here's what labels I have, how all the setting on those labels on here. I also have one for data. Tells me, okay, let's look at the fields that are located inside of this, and it brings up the field view and allows me to go and modify this on here. So these contextual tabs actually are very helpful, and they pop up when we click on any of these specific layers or structures in here. Interestingly, when we go and we're working in an enterprise and when we have an enterprise connection, when we click on that, if we have versioning set up, we actually have a contextual versioning tab, which allows us to do the sort of versioning things, create versions, manage versions, switch versions, reconcile posts, look at the changes between the versions. All built in there for us. And it is using this ribbon. That's the way that it goes and works. All right. Tools, hiding tools. Again, I don't like the tools. Or I don't like the ribbon. So there's a couple things. I can hide it here by clicking over on that little up arrow. If I double click on, if I single click, it will bring it in. I can also go and pin it closed. But again, double clicking closes it, double clicking opens it. So there's a way that you can hide and you can expose that as you're going around. I'm a minimalist. I tend to go and work like this, but there are times when I have to bring the ribbon up to go and look for specific components. So I can hide it, I can minimize it, or I can double click on any of the tab menus. It will pop and open and close them. Views and tabs, again, the same sort of thing. You can move them around. Tab groups, again, they group these functions together. You want to just explore them. So a couple things for actual editors. If we look down at the bottom of here, we actually see this is a refresh of our map document. And when we go and click this, it will actually go and refresh if there's any difference. If I have something selected, I will note next to it is my selected features, and I can zoom to that selected feature by clicking on there. I have one selected, I can zoom to it by clicking on there, or I can go and clear it out by clicking on the next button here. So very nice interface elements. We can go and zoom to something we've selected so we can be aware of what it is, or we can go and clear it out. We can always look to see how many things do we have selected right down here. Setting the scale. We also here at the other end is our scale tab. It used to be up here in ArcMap. It's been moved down to the bottom, so it's out of our way as we're going through this. Works just like ArcMap. Project options, there are some things we want to go and check for editors and make sure that these things are set. For example, our units. The comment in the chat window was, how do I set them for my application or Pro, whatever project I'm opening on? These settings inside here are for this project. And just sort of to go through here, if I go to my project and I go to my options, I then have units here. And this is what distance units am I going to use? Am I going to be miles, feet, kilometers, meters? If it turns out that you never use certain ones, for example, maybe you never use meters, you can tell it to remove those. If, however, there's things missing, for example, chains, as a surveyor, we use chains a lot. A chain is equal to 60, the equivalency is 66 feet. A chain, right here, it's actually 20.11 meters. A link is 1/100th of a chain. A rod is 16.5. So there's equivalencies. If you don't see the unit measurement that you use all the time, you can select here, and here's all the different units that you can work on as you're going through this. Same way with angular units, you can use degrees, minutes, and seconds, degrees, radians, or another one if you're using something different on here. Area measurements, you've got all these in here. Notice again, you have the ability to go, and if you're never using kilometers, you can go remove this for this project. Same thing with square meters. You can always go, if you never use hectare, you can remove them, and this is your default on here, which wherever the radio button is, that's your default unit for here. All right, so that's that. Another setting you're going to want to look at is inside of ArcMap, we would have start and stop editing. In ArcGIS Pro, by default, and when you open something, if you have the rights to edit, you are automatically editing. Now, I know that scares a lot of managers, scares a lot of people who are starting to edit. So there is an option which says you can enable and disable editing from the Edit tab. And that's actually located here on Options, under Editing, and then under Session. And right now, it's giving me a warning. Right now I'm editing. I've turned on my editing, and right here under Sessions is Edit. So I'm going to turn off editing. I'm going to go back here and turn off editing. Now I'm going to go back, and now it says, okay, I can turn this off. When I click on this and go back here, there is no start and stop editing. Automatically, I'm now editing. If you don't want to do that, make sure that you set this setting here to enable it. When you do that, under the Edit tab, you will see Start and Stop Editing there. All right. You can personalize it. You can change this from a light option, light application theme, to a dark application theme. I'm using right now a light theme so that you can see this. A dark theme is more if you're used to working in a darkened room. You can set it to dark, and it's easier to work with at that on here. Autosave, this is a big one. This is one in which you want to think about this. Inside of Pro, and let's go and talk about this. Inside of Pro, under the options or general, excuse me, here, there is automatically save edits. And what that means is that if you check this, you have the option, you can tell it every so many minutes. or every number of operations on here. Now, I used to think that we wanted that inside of ArcMap, but the reality is that maybe we didn't want it, because once you save something, you no longer can undo it. You literally have to delete or change or modify or recreate or whatever. So having autosave turned on often will go and prevent you from undoing things and cut short the undo cache that you have. So if you are going to do this autosave, make sure that you check also the dialog that says, make sure I confirm my saves, so that it doesn't automatically go and save it for you. And you have to confirm, yes, I want to save it, or no, you can delay that and say, no, don't do that. But just think about whether or not you want autosaves on here. When we first got the option for it, we all turned it on here at Panda. And very quickly we said, yeah, maybe we don't want that all the time. And just be aware of what you're doing on there. All right. Okay. So let's go back here and let's talk about this. ArcMap actually had the ability to have these panes. And these panes, you could go and move them around. It was interesting watching going to clients, and sometimes they learned how to use them well, and other times they didn't. The entire interface here with Side of Pro is all panes, so that you can go and customize this. If you have a bigger screen, you can take, or if you have multiple screens, you can take and move these off to another screen. You can take and stack them on top of one another. You can go and take, for example, and you can push it so it's going to go over to the side when we go and unpin it. So I have all of my tabs over here. It's completely customizable by you, and you tell it how you want to go and do this. Again, you want to experiment with a little bit to see how you're actually doing it. And what you're most comfortable with, whether you have it all on one side or another side. There is no single way to do this. It is completely customizable for you. Docking, again, just make sure you're aware there's multiple docking places you can put it. If you put it on top, it stacks them on top of one another and shows you the tabs at the bottom. The catalog pane, again, I went over already. There is a project area, project tab, a portal, favorites, and certain times there's a history if you're looking at the analysis tab. Contents tab, you have on there several options. This is as close to ArcMap as you can get, in that you have list by display, list by source, list by selection, list by edit, list by snap, list by label. And there's also, depending upon what you've got in there, whether you've got charts or anything. So here, drawing controls. ArcMap, we had that mini construction toolbar. That's exactly what this is. The mini construction toolbar allows us to go and have a small set of tools when we're using things. And by the way, that if I'm editing and I go to my create, and I want to create a tax parcel, when I put that and open this up, here's my tools that I have used. That is customizable. I can actually go and tell it where I want to go and put this, where I want to go and put it, and the size that I want to go and make it on here by customizing like that. I can also go to my options, my editing, and do it in there. Where is it in here? There's a place to do it in there. But I can go and customize exactly what this looks like, where it goes, everything. So if I want to go in and say, I want to go and make this, put this on the bottom instead, I can go and put it on the bottom. I personally like it over on my right side because I always have my edit panes over here. That's the drawing controls. Attribute tables, they're almost exactly like ArcMap, However, there's a couple changes. If you look at the options here, what's commonly referred to as the hamburger, if I look at that options, there's a couple things in here. Let's go and open up this attribute table here. I have, for example, find and replace here, which I never had inside of ArcMap. It allows me to go and find them and replace them. It's a different way of interfacing in there. Table of contents, there's the list by drawing, list by data source, by selection, edit. This one is interesting in that with ArcMap, we could only go and list things and edit things if we told it to start editing that individual feature. Now, if it's in our table of contents and it's checked, it is editable. So we can uncheck this. And note, when we're unchecking these things, suddenly our create features options are changed. They allow us to go and display whether or not we can edit them or not on here. Snapping, list by snapping here. This is the old selection table. What you could snap to on here. List by labeling. This is the old label manager on here. Selecting features. This is different in that with selecting features inside of here, I can still select by clicking in here and it will select what I have. I can draw a box and it will select the things that are intersected by that box. However, to unselect, by the way, I can add to a selection by holding down my shift key and adding things. Here's where the difference is. With unselecting, I cannot hold down the shift key anymore. I must hold down the control key. When I hold down the control key, it allows me to go and remove items from our selection in here. So I can go and do that. I could just easily go and clear this out. Interestingly, if I've got these things selected, and it says I've got 12 selected total, if I open up my attributes pane here, it will show me what I have selected individually, 9 here and 3 here. But the thing that's nice in Pro is I can go to any one of them and say, unselect this one and unselect this one. Or I can say, I'm not going to work with any of these, so unselect all of those. And I can narrow this down very easily by looking at interactive selections and looking at the attribution of these and figuring out which ones I want. I could also, by the way, go and delete from right here. So I can choose multiple things and I can say delete those if I wanted to. I'm not going to, but I could. All right. Deselecting things again. Shift is to add to a selection. Control is to unselect on here. Snapping. We're going to look at snapping here. Obviously, we're not going to cover all of this. We've got about 20 left to do. So we're going to have to do this with another session. But our snapping controls on here, this is on the Edit tab. We have a big snap icon. And when we are snapping, it is highlighted in blue. It is showing that it's depressed. If I click it again, it unselects them. So again, when it's in blue, it is selected. It is toggled on. It appears here, but what happens when you're on a different tab? It also appears at the bottom here. So I can have my snapping where I can snap to my nearest point, my nearest endpoint, vertex. This is the edge. This is the intersection. This is the midpoint, or I can snap to tangency. I can also set the snapping tolerance, and I can tell it also my selections in here. Snapping. Constraints. This one is very interesting. This is a new function inside of here. And it's actually, this is here, this is the constraints. And I'm going to tell it to put my constraints on. And I'm going to go and let's go and turn on our lines. So I have a line here, and I'm going to draw a line here. And when I snap here, as I'm moving and rubber banding, it's actually showing me the constraints of the actual absolute bearing and the actual distance between them. All right. And now a lot of people find this helpful. I personally, I like it more uncluttered area, but a lot of people find this helpful. And that's just by toggling this off on the bottom here. This is my constraints, and I will show me the direction constraints and my distance, and I can turn it off. We also have a comment here that says if I edit a line, also edit all the layers associated with that line, subdivision lines. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. The question is, if I edit a line with it, does it also edit the other layers associated with that line? The question is, how does that association occur? Is it an association where there might be a relationship class, or is it, for example, a topology association? So let's see, I'm not even sure in this data set if I have many things in here. Oh, I've got some roads here. I don't think there's any lines in here in this data set. Oh, but I do have some gaps and overlaps here, don't I? All right, so let's go in and look at this. Let's edit this one. I'm going to go and select this one parcel. And I'm going to go and make it so it's coincident. I'm not sure where the issue is here. It might be that this is the one that's not coincident. Yeah, this one's not coincident. So the question is, how do I make it so that that's edited and such? Again, a lot of the tools are the same. I can go and tell it to go and again, it will have to be our next session where we go over this. But for example, there's tools to go and edit the actual vertices here. If I right click, I can say edit my vertices, and it will allow me to go in here and edit these vertices and pull them down and snap them in on here and put them where I want. However, I'm going to tell you, don't do this. This is ArcMap's way of doing things. Don't do that. All right, let's get out of here. Don't do that. That's the old school way of doing things. There's new ways of doing things. In this case, if we have topology in place here, let's just go to map topology. That's a simpler way of doing things. In here, we know that there's an error here. So inside of here, there's a set of alignment tools in here. These alignment tools, we have one called alignment, where I can align the edge, and I can tell it to go and take the solid line and move it over to, let's go and do that. I wasn't looking at there very closely. I can tell it to take the solid line and move it over to the other lines in here. In this case, yeah, I must have some openings here somewhere is what it is. This one's easier. I can tell it to go and take this line and move it over here to remove that. That's one of the options, one of the tools that are available. There's also one called Align Features, and this is one of my favorites. This is a new tool in here in which I can go it and tell it I want to look at a 5-foot gap, and I want to go and take from here And I'll just do that and tell it to go and take all of the vertices within that tolerance, that 5-foot tolerance, and move them so that they're coincident. When I did that, it actually went and moved them all so that these lines were coincidence. I didn't do anything along the north-south line here, but these others. So the tools are really enhanced inside of ArcGIS Pro so that when I have gaps like this one here, I can tell it, well, this is what my new alignment. I want it to go here and down to here. And I wanted to go and align everything between there. It wasn't a big enough gap. Let's go with an 8-foot gap. And tell it to go and realign and fix all these in here. Either bigger than I think it is. Try one more time, or I'm looking at something that's not here. Okay. Yep, there must be something behind it. There is something else in there. Sorry. But these tools allows you to go and clean these things up. The next workshop, actually a month from now, we're going to go over, I'm going to look at some of these edit tools in here. We've basically covered a lot of the constraints here. Symbology, there's a complete whole new set of symbology as far as how one goes and looks at the ability to go and display elements inside of here. Let's go and clear this out. So I'm going to go and stop this, and I'm going to ask you if you want to see more, come back next month. Or if you want to see something about the parcel fabric, come back here in 2 weeks. And please make sure you join up. And hopefully you got something. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you all for being here.